it is your turn to ask questions of our illustrious panel. If you're on that side of the room, Richard will come with this microphone. I've got a front mic for this side of the room, so hands up please for any questions, for anything to do with that you've heard today, or any general parts questions you would like to ask our panel.
Or you all want to go in?
You can't leave the room until I add some questions, and eat the cake obviously. There must be some questions out there. If not, I'll sing. I thought I'd send a hand up at least. You've got a hand, brilliant.
I'm just ad-libbing here. So we talked a lot about partnerships and stuff today, and I wonder whether anyone's got any sort of examples or suggestions for developing partnerships that can improve the diversity within our sector, because that's something that's not really been spoken about or highlighted, and it's a little bit obvious in the room.
Who's going to take that one?
Okay, hi. I don't have an answer, but I do know that we've got quite a few. I think there's so much interest in trying to increase diversity. There's a lot of research that's going on about how to engage younger people and how to engage people from those harder to reach groups. So the research is being done as far as I know. I will kind of try and get that fed into various networks as and when. But I do know that one of my colleagues in particular, Claire Rishbeth, who's based at Sheffield, is doing a lot of work on this. So yeah, I'm sure there's lots of other work going on around the room as well. But yeah, so.
Were you going for that, James?
No, go on, you go.
Okay. So one of the things that's in the sort of front section of our City of Nature document is we were trying to pull it together during COVID. So doing public meetings like this wasn't feasible. But somebody had the brilliant idea of requesting Earth stories. And it went round the whole city and people were asked to submit their Earth stories. And when we did an analysis of who'd sent them in, it was actually fantastic in terms of across all genders, all ethnicities, disability, etc., in terms of where it ticked. And it just seemed to have hit a chord with people in terms of a narrative that, and we got some fantastic sort of personal testimonies of what it meant to people to have a valued green space or patch of nature nearby them. So that gave us quite a few leads as well. And but it's also interesting in terms of what connected in that request.
I also obviously don't have a solution, I'm afraid, but I know there's a couple of interesting things on this lately. So one, there was a really interesting Wildlife Trust recorded webinar. I don't know if it went live, I assume it went live initially on YouTube at the moment, which I'm about halfway through watching. It's an hour and a half, be warned, on exactly this topic. And it also gets into the detail of, as well as finding representation for our sector from all across all different ethnicities and backgrounds and so on, how you make sure those people don't become a token gesture, and the sort of weight placed on the shoulders of any of those people who end up in those roles, that it's not fair for them to represent the whole of their kind of the diversity they're representing. So it was quite an interesting debate worth watching. We could perhaps share the details. I'll share it with Alison. And the other one was that I know there's some interesting projects around, but one of them we've come across was the New to Nature funding, which is out there at the moment. I think they're just going to a second round of shortlisting for that, which is through Groundwork and I think other partners looking at bringing people who are completely new to the sector and from more diverse backgrounds into it in varied roles. So again, worth watching if there's more funding on that in the future.
Hi. Yeah, I have 3 examples to share with you, 2 of them regional. One is Fosel Road Community Centre in Coventry have set up an absolutely brilliant group for South Asian trekking across the city and into nature spaces right across the region. They've had such success and there is such a demand for this that they're now already running kind of national treks up to Snowdonia on Christmas Day, and you know there's literally groups of 50 to 60 people going on mass walks through nature spaces. It's a real success story. So do look that one up. Another is there's a group of bird watchers, again, South Asian, and a group leading this. It's a national group. Unfortunately, their name has slipped my mind, so it's one I'll have to look up and send to Alison for you. But again, it got national press attention. There's a huge appetite for it, and again, throughout COVID, that became a regular thing. They even came to the Heritage Park. I'm really annoyed that I can't remember their name. And then thirdly, one around gender that I think hopefully everybody in the room should already know about, but if not, look them up. There's a brilliant campaign, a national campaign called Make Space for Girls, and those girls look at how we make park spaces and green spaces feel safe, in particular to teenage girls. How do we address lighting at entrances, and just encourage generally the use of parks and green spaces with those individuals in mind. So I'll happily share the links with Alison.
Yeah, just on the very same topic, really, we're really engaged with the WAG agenda also, and that's been provided some real insight into barriers. We've done some academic work with Leeds University around that, which has really helped. And then I share your observations on the room and the issues we've got around diversity in the sector. I think from a corporate perspective within Leeds, we're committed in terms of our new management and development programme to look at EDCI issues. What we really hope for us as a management group is how we can get that to translate to parks beyond. We've got a good balance in terms of gender, but how we get a park service that reflects the community that we serve. Thanks.
Thank you. Any more questions?
Thank you. I was a student in Leeds in the early 70s. I see that there's three fine cities on the wall there, Sheffield, Birmingham and Leeds. When I was a student, I was aware of Headingley, because that's where the students live. So Selly Park's good for Birmingham. And we used to go to Headingley Park, Roundhay Park, and a place called the Ridge. I don't know whether that was the real name. So how would the cities go about publicising the use of the parks for not just the middle-aged blokes like me these days, but for the young people to go out there and enjoy their civic communities?
Okay, so I go first. I'll go first. As you mentioned Leeds, and the ridge you were after was Woodhouse Ridge. So you stuck close to Headingley. And as somebody who studied in Leeds myself, I appreciate you are naturally drawn to those student areas, something that's reflected in Birmingham. We've got a big student population. We're actually developing a new green space, a new park in that community right now, and it's been interesting how we strike a balance in terms of design and work with communities, both the transient community that comes and goes and that community that stays, and how we get green spaces that reflects both and that's usable by both. I think from a usage perspective, I mean, the numbers that we have of visits to Leeds Parks is significant. We estimate that to be 45 million. We do a very good job at engaging young people in that process, and they're very well used spaces. What we often find with some of those spaces, they create different management challenges, certainly around Woodhouse Moor and how we manage that, so how we've managed that through COVID. And I think it's really COVID's shone a light on how significant Woodhouse Moor is to that community and how much they do value it. And I think it's increasingly for us about how we develop spaces, not just with things, but how we develop them spaces that are usable for those communities and those age groups. Linking it back to the issue we just talked around women's and girls, how we have spaces that are usable and not just a collection of multi-use games and skate parks that we assume people will use if we build them. So it's ensuring that we have spaces that are usable. I don't think we have an issue in terms of encouraging use, and I'd hope that young people know where the green spaces are now. They're certainly well promoted. So yeah, I think for us it's about how we develop and shape them so that they can be more used productively and not used from a negative perspective.
Hi there. I just wanted to talk a little bit about young people and sport, and certainly within Walsall, because we've got a sports development section working very, very closely now with our Green Spaces development people, that sport and sport activity is something that we are focusing quite heavily on. So those sports development people are working in schools and they're working in local colleges to bring those people through, and there's sort of leadership programs that they run within schools, encouraging people to do sports coaching and that sort of thing. Groundwork was working with young people as well to encourage young people to get involved in friends groups, and that was through a lottery funded program as well. So there are some things that we are developing. But there's something that I would really like to work on in the future is all about climate change and getting those people engaged really through the climate change agenda. So that's something that we want to look at in the future.
Thank you. Any more questions?
Something we haven't heard mentioned of today. I think the words levelling up have been used occasionally during the course of the proceedings. But I just wanted to sort of get a comment from the panel, really, just from information as much as anything else. I think it's a total pot of £39 million. I think £9 million has been drawn down already. Of course, I'm talking about levelling up parks, an initiative benefiting hopefully 85 local authorities. I just wondered if the panel have got any comments on the project so far, and whether this is a sort of initiative that should be encouraged in the future.
Yeah, go on then. I'll start. So I had the privilege of judging, not judging, it's the wrong word, assessing a couple of levelling up sites a few weeks back. It's interesting. They're grateful for the money, was the view I took. On one of those, the money will make a difference, but the sad background of the story was that it used to be a green flag site and no longer is, for obvious local authority budget reasons, and the two people I met on site were the whole parks team for that town and that borough. So it's pretty obvious why it wasn't anymore. So swings and roundabouts a little bit, which is exactly what they're spending on, actually. Wasn't deliberate. My son would call that a dad joke, wouldn't he? The other one was, I thought, quite unexpected to me, because it was a green space, not a park, if there's a subtle distinction there. And I suppose you could say actually the Levelling Up funding was going to make more of a difference, because you were starting from a baseline of exactly that, a blank canvas, and they were looking at a community-based project. But again, you know, that's one site in a pretty large town, another site in a medium-sized town, and it's an absolute drop in the ocean. I think we all recognise that. Chris can tell you about some of his where he wasn't allowed to park his car nearby for fear of having no wheels afterwards. So, you know, he's seen some pretty interesting ones too.
Yes, I had the privilege of doing a lot around the northwest. Some very interesting sites. I won't name them. There's someone here from that area, but deprivation on a scale that most of us in this room might not actually recognise and see ever in our lifetime. You know, and there is green space in those estates and those communities, and they're awful. And society has got lots of issues in those areas. Parks alone will not solve those problems, but parks are part of the solution. But it needs a damn sight more than 85 grand to make a difference, and a much wider thought process. And the example I'll give you, and I won't name the authority, one particular park, a massive dumping ground, and all the residents dump their rubbish on a park. You know, and what they want to do is change this park so people don't dump rubbish on this park. But I asked the question, what happens with their waste? Bear in mind, it's back-to-back terrace, no front garden, no back garden, you know, a totally diverse community. Where are their bins? They don't have bins. All their waste is put in a bag, basically, and they only get their bag emptied once a fortnight. So the kitchen waste goes in a bag. You've got no front garden. You've got no back garden. So what are they going to do with it? They throw it on the park. So you can half understand why that community acts the way it does when there's a much wider problem to solve. And you only have to look at the continent to see how they solve it. They have communal bins on streets. They live in high-rise flats with no gardens, but their kitchen waste comes down, communal bin, just no dumping. So we have much bigger problems to solve in this nation. I'm on my high horse now, aren't I? And it is a choice. We are a rich nation. It's how we choose to use that money is the problem. We just wasted £9 billion on false COVID claims. And we ignore that, that's fine. We ignore all that. We need less than that. Half of that would solve all our problems in this room and make space for girls because our parks will be safe, and all our other communities as well. Because the bottom line is, without basic funding, we're struggling. Sorry.
Yeah,
Hi, horse.
I suppose I was just going to echo that. I think I'm grateful for any funding, and we'll use the funding that we got wisely, and we're actually going to develop a really good scheme for that in Leeds. Probably not for the record, not for the recording. I wish it was larger. I wish it was more strategic. I wish it wasn't just a tokenistic bit of capital with some revenue linked to it. We've been really lucky because we developed and used Levelling Up as being one of our opportunities to get significant investment into green spaces. We've sought to make the same case through Shared Prosperity Fund. Out of the 5 bids that we submitted in Leeds, green space featured in every one of them. And if we're successful in them, our investment into Leeds will be into the tens of millions. So, waiting on the 17th of November with excitement that we might get 1, trepidation we get 2, terrified we get 3, because it'd be how do we deliver it. But that through us lobbying our executive board, it was the first chance and the first time we were really successful to realise that Levelling Up is about improving them kind of facilities, improving parks and green spaces. So fingers crossed we get some of the big pot and not just some of the incidental little bits on the end.
Just to say one other quick thing on that, I think there just seems to be no learning either, does there? Because if you remember pocket park schemes, how many years ago that we delivered those? And one of the things I found was great, another bit of cash, don't look a gift horse in the mouth. There was no follow-up, was there? We all just delivered stuff and then probably got forgotten about. It seems, and Chris might be correct me if I'm wrong, there doesn't seem to be any planned follow-up this time either. So we've done these pre-assessments, but it isn't yet planned on what the post-project assessment will be. So how are we going to learn from any of these? Which ones didn't work?
I believe there is a plan that we will go back to those sites in 18 months' time. However, that's not confirmed. One last question, or over to Liz to sum up? I think it's over to you, Liz, just to sum up the day.
Well, as I say, thanks to everybody for coming. It's been a fantastic day. I think lots and lots of inspiration for people to take away. As Chris said, please fill in your evaluations. They are priceless to us, so don't forget to do that before you go and leave those with Alison. But yeah, it's just thanks to all the speakers. Absolutely fantastic. And yes, have a safe journey home. Thank you very much.